What is up, guys? It's Mason once again. I'm sorry this video is long overdue, but just over the weekend we crowned our first youngest national champion in the name of Philip Selikem. Now, throughout the tournament, I was doing live coverage, and let's just say he played impressive chess. So before we get into the games, I want you guys to like, comment, and subscribe. It really does help me out, and I would also like your help in the sense that I'm just one man and I'm not able to look at every single thing happening in the world, especially in Africa, which is where I want to focus on. So if there are any tournaments and any games that are impressive that happen in Africa where PGNs are available, I would really like your help in the comments down below. Let me know about such games, send me the links and I'll look at them. Right now I focus on Ghana because that's where I am, but like for example Nigeria's national championship, if anyone can help me with that, I'll be very, very grateful. Okay, so now without much ado, let's get into the video. So the first game we're looking at is Selikem's game against Frimpong Smart. Selikem is playing white and we have e4 c5 a Sicilian, knight e3 close the Sicilian, and he goes for this fianchetto structure. And I've always been saying how that fianchetto structures, in as much as they are solid, it's a solid defensive position, it can also be used aggressively, right? And Selikem shows us here. So after queen d2, knight d4, castles, he goes f4, right? This is perfectly fine in fianchetto structure. So don't think that because you have a fianchetto, those pawns can't be pushed. It's actually more likely to see these kind of aggressive type games in fianchetto structures as compared to like normal chess structures, right? We have rook b8, and here Selikem plays knight to c1, which did not really make much sense. If you are bringing the knight here, doesn't make much sense. The only thing I could figure out of this move was that he wanted to avoid trading the knights. And I don't know if that's like something you really want to avoid, because this knight is very active for your opponent. So him trading it for your inactive knight seems to be a good idea. But maybe he has a different thing in mind. I couldn't really figure it out. I looked at it for a while. But yes, knight c1 is completely fine. Bishop to e6. And then we have knight to d5, which is a strange move, because you are literally giving your opponent a very good position. First of all, this is a closed position, so knights are better than bishops. So by bringing your knight here, you are basically giving your opponent better quality of materials. Actually, the Angie's move here doesn't make any sense to me. It says knight here, but whatever. We have knight to d5, and instead of bishop takes, he plays knight takes. That's also fine. Pawn takes, and then we have bishop to d7. So now black is seemingly having a better position. First of all, because of this backward knight's move and the kind of trade that went on here. And then we have f takes e5, and black makes an inaccuracy here by playing d takes e5. And the reason why this is bad is because after c3, knight b4, you win a pawn, white wins a pawn. What would have been better is like bishop takes, but it seems maybe black was worried about maybe bishop g5, queen b6, c3, knight f5, and then and maybe he thinks that black has a lot of potential to attack his position. Maybe his squares look weak, h5, h4. Remember, fianchetto structures can't do this. So maybe he saw this and was like, I don't think that's good, and which is why he went for this variation, which actually puts him in a disadvantageous position. We have rook e8, queen to f2, lining up his pieces for the attack. Anytime your opponent has a weakness, it's a good idea to attack it, because you force your opponent to defend it or to move the piece. And by continuously moving these pawns and bringing the pieces to the defense, your opponent doesn't have a lot of like free movement. We have b6, bishop to e3, f5, knight e2, and then g5. So now we can see that black is also becoming very aggressive. At first, white was the aggressor, but it looks here like black is taking over. And I mean, this is something that you should do, seeing as you have messed up somewhere in the center, right? Now we have c4, knight to d6, knight to c3, and then f4. f4 is a strange move. Yes, you want to begin your attack. Yes, you want to start forcing your opponent to trade pieces and weaken the king. But f4 gives your opponent a very well needed square, right? This knight getting here is not something you want to see in your life, but he does allow it. And after g takes, bishop back, king h8, king h1, knight e4. I'm expecting, okay, you're going to take. But I guess the reason he doesn't want to take is because you give your opponent 3 pawns in the center, which he thinks is, maybe he judges them as very dangerous, so that's fine. But he goes knight to f4, and now this knight is going to be a nuisance in the future. We have rook to g1, knight to h6, bishop to f3, bishop to f5, bishop to c3, and I like what Selikem is doing here. He's looking at the future prospects, and you see that he starts pushing his pieces towards his opponent's weaknesses, right? So this could be a clear weakness for his opponent. This is a backward pawn, clear weakness for his opponent, and he starts doing that, right? Queen to e7, rook a to e1, rook b to e8, and then we go bishop to h5, attacking the rook. And someone might say, oh, just move the rook, right? So like, let's say I move my rook, right? Basically what happens here is what was the move? Well, it's not actually in this position, but there's a very interesting line. Let's go after, like, bishop takes, rook takes. He plays bishop to f6, and the reason why he plays bishop to f6 here is simply because you can't save the rook. If you try saving the rook in this position, you are basically allowing the rook takes g7. After the rook takes, either one is fine. You can either take with your rook or you can take with your bishop, and you can see that black is literally struggling. This knight cannot do much. The rooks are hanging. You can just keep increasing the pressure or just go for the exchange and win. So it's a very bad position here for black. So we get bishop to f6, sorry. Bishop takes, rook takes, and then the beautiful queen takes f4. Because if you do take, right, you run into bishop takes with check. Actually, this is checkmate. So if you decide to take with your queen, you still lose because this is also checkmate. It doesn't matter how you block, whether you block with the queen or you block with the knight, you still get checkmated. So a beautiful find here by Selikem. And after some moves, I don't know if this is where the games end, but when I took it from PMChess, this is where it stopped. But Selikem wins in this position. I mean, regardless, he actually wins. So a very nice style of play by Selikem. Now move on to his next game. We are not looking at all his games. I just picked 4 games, and this is his game versus David Ameku. David Ameku is going to get pissed off because I'm not looking at his wins. I'm looking at his losses. But don't worry, David. Just send me the games you want, and I'll look at them for you. And if you guys want me to look at round 1, phase 1, I can still do it. If there were any games, interesting games you wanted me to look at, I can definitely take a look at them. I just thought that because phase 2 came in, there's no point in looking at phase 1. But if there are some interesting games, just let me know. Interesting. Let me just emphasize that. So now we have e4, c5, another Sicilian, and we get this exact same structure. The difference between this structure and the first one is that Smart played e5, right? That was the slight difference. We have bishop to e7, h3, and we get a similar structure from white. But here we see a difference in styles. So as usual, with this kind of structure, white can attack on the king side and black can attack on the queen side, right? Good. f4, bishop to b7, castles, g4, b4, knight to d1, knight to d7, g5. And now black has a key decision to make. Now, when your opponent plays these fianchetto style attacks, the drawback is the safety of your king. As obvious as that is the drawback. And mostly what I've found about attacking on one side of the board is that when your opponent crashes in the center, it actually kind of weakens or dismantles your attack, right? So you can continue attacking on the opposite side of the board. It could succeed, but when you compare both players' attack, the queen side attack wins the queen side, but the king side attack leads to checkmate. So to kind of dispel your opponent's attack, a very good idea is to break in the center, right? So during the live stream, I was mentioning that he might want to go for a break in the center, right? So like d5, if your opponent doesn't take, things are opening up. This bishop is opening up. You can continue your idea here if you do so, please. You have a possibility of getting your knight into a square like this, like if your knight can find a way to come in here and then come in here. There are problems you can cause for your opponent due to the weakened king position. So you have two options, and black plays f6, which is not bad, but then you allow your opponent to furthermore close the position and continue his attack. Now, as long as the position is going to be closed, the safer his king is going to be. So you can't really counterattack. But with the way he does it, we in turn get this f takes, d takes, and we can't get this pawn push. But if he did it earlier, this pawn push would not have been so easy to make, right? So maybe a slight bad decision making here from black, right? But he's still fine. It's still fine. Then he plays knight d8. And the question is like, what is the point of knight d8? First thing that comes to mind, the knight is coming here to join in the defense. But then that is too slow. You are basically giving your opponent a chance to continue his attack. What we were looking at during the live stream was this idea. And the point is to like disorient these pieces, right? If you can get rid of the bishop, you kind of slow down his attack, right? He can't really be as forceful as he wants to. So, I mean, it was kind of like, why knight d8? And I still can't figure out knight d8 besides this move, or maybe this with the knight coming in here. I don't know. But we're torn between, is this a good move to make, or is knight to b6 a better move to make? We have knight to f2, and then finally knight to b6, f5, d5 finally, and now we have f6. d5 at this point is not so good of a move because you have to respond to this threat, and if you do respond to the threat, okay, pawn push is not actually likely. I was thinking pawn push was likely, like you could close the position, but it's fine. We have g takes f6, g takes f6, bishop takes f6, knight g to f4, knight, sorry, to g4, and then knight to c4. Now, the timing of this move is bad. The engine is not showing. Let me turn on the eval bar so that you guys can see. So, the engine gives quite a massive advantage here, but it's an only move. So you can pause the video and try and figure out what the winning move is. Now, during the live stream, we kept on saying that if he sees this move, he has balls, but if he doesn't, he's a spineless guy. But again, not everybody, even if you did see this move, you wouldn't want to play it. The move, or the only good move here that keeps the winning advantage, is rook takes f6. Because if knight takes, you have knight check, king goes back. If the king steps in here, it's checkmate. It's checkmate in like 2. You take the rook, king comes in, you check again, king moves, and now bishop takes. So now you have 6 pieces versus your opponent's 4. And a weakened king. Like the king is going to struggle to find safety. And the engine gives us like a +6. Right? But who would do that, right? Like, as good as you are, when it comes to queen sacrifices, you have to be very sure. Like, nobody takes that kind of risk. Unless your name is Magnus Carlsen. But anyways, that's not what we got in the game. We got the safe, queen to e2. And in this position, the engine believes that black has gained the advantage, has saved himself. So we have bishop to g7, which is not actually what you should do. You just want to take this bishop, right? There are a lot of dark square weaknesses on your position. This light square bishop may not be able to develop itself anytime soon. So you want to deal with the problems. The more you trade down pieces, the better your position. Because remember, black is up a pawn. So if black can continuously trade down, this doesn't work. Mind you that this knight is also hanging, right? So the more pieces that black can trade down, the better his position. But he doesn't, and he plays bishop here. And I don't know the reason why. He goes knight to h5. Finally, we have knight takes. And it seems this move was a bait. Whether he intended it or not, I cannot confirm or deny. But he plays queen takes e3. And black just blanked out here. Black saw one thing, which you are all seeing. and completely blanked out of the position. Because in this position, black plays bishop to d4. And I'm sure he was thinking, finally, I've won the queen. I can win this game. But as you can all see, he completely misses. Knight to h6 check. You can't move. And after the king moves back, this is checkmate. So yeah. After knight to h6, David Ameku resigns the game. Beautiful attacking game by Selikem. Very beautiful attacking game by Selikem. I have to turn off the engine because it keeps doing this to me. Okay, let's leave it for now. So now move on to the next game. Now, the sign of a champion is not just seen as in his ability to win games, it's seen in his ability to save bad positions. So like throughout the tournament, Selikem was always pushing the envelope, but he met very strong opponents who like really put it to him and made him struggle in a sense. So in comes Prince Akpa, who, as I mean, he really meant this tournament. Like you could see, he really meant this tournament. E4, C5, we have another Sicilian, but in this case, we get a Smith-Morra gambit. And let's just say Prince Akpa goes for this like queenless middle game. Maybe he thinks that he can overpower his opponent in the end game, which is a very like logical thing to do. Most of the kids are very strong in the middle game, but struggle in the end game. Not Selikem, it seems. Knight b5 and knight takes, e6, knight c7, king goes up, bishop to e3, b6, and then castles kingside. So what Prince Akpa has managed to do is that he, even though he has sacrificed material, he's extremely active in this game, and he has prevented his opponent from castling. So his opponent is going to have a very difficult time, especially with his king in the center. You can see that this bishop is going to take a while to develop, so on and so forth. So the game continues, and eventually Selikem manages to get out, but it seems as though Prince Akpa allows it because his pieces seem to be uncoordinated. They were just hanging around various sides of the board. So he cedes a little bit of activity to get his pieces much more coordinated. And then we get into this position. So now white is completely developed, and so is black. Black has solved quite a number of his problems. But after knight d4, knight e4, bishop to g4, Prince Akpa takes over the lead because Selikem makes a wrong calculation in his analysis here, and he thinks he's like winning something, but actually he makes this position easily winning for Prince Akpa. Because now we have bishop takes, pawn takes, bishop comes in check, sidestepping. After the king moves, then you play rook takes. And now what do we see here? Equal number of pawns, but Prince Akpa has an extra piece, right? A knight and a bishop for a rook. A knight and a bishop are better than a rook, right? This is just good for him. So you can trade off the rooks and you can play with these two guys, and white is going to have a very good and a very like strong winning position. So I think Prince Akpa I think Selikem probably miscalculated that. The saving grace for him, I would say, in this position is this pawn, right? It's a passed pawn, but it's an isolated passed pawn. So if he could find a way to develop this pawn, he could maybe get a piece back or something. But it's going to be a very difficult task, right? Rook to c2, right? The rook on the 7th rank is a pig. You want to do these types of moves to sort of like, you want to do these kinds of moves basically to win these pawns and at the same time put pressure on your opponent to make moves. And here, Prince Akpa miscalculates. His back rank is weak, and he knows that. But he seems to calculate that because he can bring his bishop back, he's completely fine. So he plays rook takes. Unfortunately for him, black can play a set of moves that seemingly looks like impossible, but it actually works. What are these moves? Rook to c1 check. Bishop comes back. Rook to e8. And you might think, oh, I have g6, g2, or g3, sorry. But it doesn't work. Because even if you do play it here, my point, your opponent is always going to win the bishop. And that's basically what happens here. And now black is better. Because now you no longer have that extra piece. It's two rooks versus this. If a rook versus a knight, the rook is more powerful than the knight. So we just go on with this end game. And it seems maybe Salikem was okay with the position because eventually, I mean, this was a lot of things to calculate, but I'm just skipping it because this game basically ends in a draw. So he saves the position. Mind you, yes, I know it's a miscalculation on the side of Prince Akbar, but you still have to make good moves to see and punish such mistakes. So kudos to Salikem for seeing these things. And now the final game is against Clinton Fomevo Cephas, or Cephas, however I want to pronounce the name. And Salikem is playing as black here as well. So d4, knight f6, c4, g6, knight c3. Let's just skip a little bit of the opening. And here we see that Salikem plays the exact same structural idea. It seems he likes going straight for the jugular. And the thing about, yes, you might look at some of the games and say his attacks are unprincipled, or his attacks work because his opponents miss certain things. But that's the thing about aggressive chess. Like you put your opponent like under pressure because he has to think. If you can like think about my game against Professor Danu or my game against Odoe Wellington, you see that by pushing the pressure, you cause your opponent to play in certain ways, which can give you the advantage. So it's something like Mikhail Tal. Sometimes you look at his games with the engine, and the engine is like he was blundering or he was making inaccuracies like crazy. But the question is, on the board with a human being who has emotions and fears, it makes perfect sense, right? So he does goes for this exact same idea, aggressive idea, albeit not the best way to go about it, but it works for him. We have c5, knight to g5, c takes d6, knight takes, bishop takes, queen takes, queen to b3 check, king to h7, b5, and then we get f4. Again, always going on the attack. But unfortunately, again, this is I'm going to show a complex line with the engine. When we looked at this line when we looked at this line, all of us looked at this move, right? Because you take and then you are threatening the queen. And if the queen takes, you have takes again and you are still threatening the queen. So it seems very logical to play this move. It doesn't seem like a bad idea to play this move. And it isn't. But the better idea is to go f takes e. And we'll see in a bit. But he goes like e takes d5. We have knight takes e5. Wait, is my line missing? Yeah, my line is missing. Yeah, so basically the line is to go, or at least one of the lines is to go takes, and another line is to go knight to e4. I think I didn't save my lines. And the point of knight to e4 is like quite crazy, and I'll try and show it. So if your opponent does go, for example, queen to f8, you have bishop to h4. And let's say your opponent traps the bishop, right? It's like you're asking for it, right? What happens if your opponent like captures the bishop, tries to trap the bishop? There are many lines. You can go, for example, pawn takes, attacking the knight. If your opponent takes, you can play. Oh, I didn't save my lines. That's the problem. I think you can play rook takes. And after rook takes, if your opponent takes, you have the move knight here, attacking this rook. If your opponent goes rook to b8, you have queen to c2, attacking the king. And after the king moves, let's say, to h8, you have bishop here. And what's the point of this? Your opponent seemingly cannot make a move, especially with the back rank pieces, because you are going to crash in and win a piece, completely paralyzing your opponent on the back rank. yes, black is up in material, but black cannot do anything in this position. You are threatening something like knight to f4 and to start like Bobby Fischer windmilling your opponent's pieces, right? So it was a very crazy line to see. And I mean, if you don't see it, I mean, it's completely fine. So we get this line, and after a few moves, we get into this position. And it's, sorry, I messed up here. So we get into this position, and I mean, the worst of it is over. There's no pressure on both sides, but maybe white has an opportunity as per the engine. And in this position, like, you look at the board as white, and you ask yourself, how can I do something, right? You don't want to just end the game in a draw. The game is looking drawish, but you don't want to just end the game in a draw. The question is, how do I do something? How do I create problems for my opponent? And you might notice this, right? The queen on the same diagonal as the king. And the question is, okay, so how can I take advantage of this weakness? H5 is what comes to mind. But as you can see from the engine, H5 makes a glaring error. What is the glaring error? White misses a key component in his position, and that is F3. F3 is not well defended, right? You might look at it and say, oh, if rook takes, king takes, and I'm fine. But you go 2 moves further and you realize you are actually not fine. Why? Let's just make a random move. I don't want to show the moves in the game. But after rook takes, if king takes, bishop takes, you realize that once you hide your king, the queen is gone. And once you take with the queen, I take with my queen, and you are still losing. So in as much as you notice that the king is defending F3, F3 is not well defended, or is not defended enough. You need a stronger defense of F3. So the move here was not H5, it was knight to D2. But then again, even with the viewers watching, most of us were thinking, okay, so how can white make a difference? So that's where our minds were. We were on creating problems for our opponent rather than observing the problems we have ourselves. And that is why he plays H5, which allows this move. And from this position, it's basically just mate in one. No matter what you do, you block here, you get hit with this. You can't go in here with the king. You can't, like, you literally can't do anything, right? The only option you have is just this, or even this, and you are still dead, right? So that is why in this position, Clinton resigned the game. He missed a singular thing, right? Similar with Prince Akpa, he missed a singular thing, and Selichem just comes crashing in. So it's something that, like, he does very well. I mean, from looking at his games, there are some clear issues with his attack. Again, like, when I make these statements, I'm not saying I would whip him off the board. I was cleared in phase 1. I couldn't even get to phase 2, right? There are some clear issues with his attacks. If he can fix that, his attacks should become very scary, and he become more of a scary player, right? He's 14 years of age, and he has managed to win the nationals. It shows that there's so much more he can do to improve. Like, this guy in like about 5 years could become a tyrant in Ghana chess. He could even become a tyrant in international chess. I mean, just if the right things can align for him and he doesn't get distracted by some other things, this guy can really go far. So there are some chinks in his armor. Prince Akpa showed that. Clinton at a point showed that. But because of their, like, the slight, like, closing of their eyes, he managed to capitalize and destroy them, basically. So yes, there are chinks in his armor, but he's doing so well, and we are so proud of him. We can't wait to see how far he's going to go. So yeah, that is it. Selichem is the new national champion of Ghana. That is, like, the strongest player in Ghana. And with this tournament, he raises his rating to about 1900. He plays another tournament. This guy is simply going to like 2000. And it's been a while since we've had a 2000 rated player. So we can't wait to see that. So anyway, guys, that has been the nationals. If there's, like, when the women's section comes on, I will let you guys know. But thank you guys so much for being with me throughout this journey. I really appreciate the support, joining the live streams, commenting. Like, the engagement these days has been crazy. I really do appreciate it. I wish I said this at the start of the video. Maybe the next video I do, or the next 2 videos I do, because one has already been pre-recorded, I will make a mention of this. Thank you guys so much. I really do appreciate seeing you, and I'll see you in the next video. Have a great rest of your day. Peace.